Well, good evening, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I'll be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night, we talked about why we lie, and how much easier it is to lie than to tell the truth. But then, you have to cover one lie with another, and then another, and then another, and eventually the truth is gone. And how much pain that causes, how much horror you cause by lying. As opposed to the truth, just tell the truth once. It'll hurt for a second, and then you're free. And of course, our masters, they don't want us to be free. And if you ever saw their faces, you would know why. And you would be very, very scared, because they are all terrified. And they are all terrified of us. And just remember the stories I tell you about New Zealand. That gibbering madness, where they'd rather destroy themselves just to get even with you because you presented them with the truth. That was something I frankly never could have believed possible unless I had seen it myself over and over it for 3 years. Me, I'm too tired, I'm too lonely, and I'm too sad to be scared much of anything anymore. Most of me has died one time too many to feel much of anything. And you know what? That makes me sad. So tonight, I thought we would chat about safe ground. We continue to get more and more questions on where will it be safe. And not just from the event, but also from these endless wars, these endless artificially created diseases, these endless campaigns of hate and mistrust to turn us against each other. So where, in essence, could we run and then hide? Well, the surface of the earth, at least the western parts, has been claimed mostly by our masters. They have certainly claimed all of the highest mountains in the United States and North America, and have put their custom-bred humans, their soldiers, up there as their last line of defense against us, the cattle, in case we should discover at the very last moment, before the event, the hidden entrances to their vast mega-cities inside the crust of the earth. These same custom-bred soldier slaves of theirs, they're going to be responsible for repopulating the surface of the earth again, since they are custom-bred humans, makes them custom-bred slaves. And if the masters lose a few million of them, well, that's okay. They've still got plenty left in their megacities servicing them. The rest of us will just be wiped away, and hopefully in the most horrible way possible, especially if they can get their HARP weapon working properly so they can ignite the atmosphere and burn us all to a cinder, 7 billion humans, and all the animal and plant and fish life they can get. And then that would, of course, be a sacrifice to their god, to their Satan, call her back to earth, sit on the throne. And again, trying to deal with anybody who thinks in these terms is just not possible. You can't sit down and have a nice cup of coffee and try to solve the problems of the world with someone who thinks Satan is real and worships her and wants to kill you in her glory. It's not going to happen. And it's foolish of us to think it ever could have. So anyway, we here at the 2012 Fad have some recommendations about safe ground. And as always, it's entirely up to you to decide what you're going to do. Let's start with the basics. The only safe places I think we'll have are, if you're in the States, Montana, and very high up in the mountains, not as high as the soldier slaves are, but there's got to be enough space. Find you a cave, tuck in with as much of the supplies as you can get. In South America, they're the Andes, in Chile, bordering on Argentina. But you have to remember that we've got a lot of earthquakes there. And the earthquake in Chile in 2010 actually changed the physical shape of the planet. And of course, you're in the south, you're close to the South Pole, so you're going to be right there at the footstep of when the wave happens, when all of that ice on top of the southernmost continent slides into the ocean. Now this is enough ice that you could actually cover all of the North American continent, all of Europe with ice that's thousands of feet thick. All that ice is going to go into the ocean. And if you ever dropped a couple of ice cubes into a cocktail at a bar, And you see there, really, water has no place to go but up and out. Third alternative, Central Europe. In a country surrounded by mountains, a farming society, little or no foreign debt, and still uses their own currency. So those are three basic places that we think are okay. So, what are the basic concepts we're dealing with? Well, if you're in the United States and you have no money and no plan, the questions are this. Do you live near mountains? Are there caves in those mountains? Can you buy the land that these cave mouths open into? Can you move in supplies without anybody knowing? And then it gets into, well, you need money and here's why. Do you have extra cash to hire farmhands? Good, honest, hard-working farm people with a variety of skills. People that you can hire not just to save their lives, because frankly, they'll never believe you about the event and the dead brown dwarf star and the Masters, and they won't believe you. Just don't even bother. You need to hire people to save their lives, but at the same time, you need enough different skill sets to start a small community. Do you have an inventory of what you already have, what you already own? Your tools, your equipment, your seeds, your books, your games, your toys. Do you have a shopping list of what you should be buying? Again, grains, plants, trees, tools, water-powered generator, solar generator, wind generator, wind turbine. We just don't have the time to explain to you about building vacuum-powered electrical generators. We covered this very simply in an earlier episode. If you were paying attention, it's there. Go for it. But I've been doing this for 40 years. I can't give you 40 years of knowledge, 40 years of every bloody day learning something new, learning that something has changed. I can't condense it for you. I can't. All I can give you is a very, very, very broad brush, and then you're on your own. Which is a good point. Do you know what you're going to need once you are on your own? Now, there are lots of survivalist websites you can visit. There's no sense trying to recreate the wheel when there are plenty of folks out there who will tell you what you need. You need guns. You need ammunition. You need the machine that makes, that presses, well, you need to know how to make ammunition. Do you even know how to make gunpowder? That's a lot of fun. Do you know how to make paper? Do you know how to make toilet paper? Do you know how to make soap? Do you know how to make toothpaste? Do you know how to make a toothbrush? Do you know how to weave cloth? Do you know what cloth is made from? Do you know how to make a pot out of clay? Do you know how to work in metal or wood or ceramics or glass? Do you know how? Do you know how to make ink? But please, 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 take all the books you can buy. Books on every subject you can think of. How-to books. Again, do you know how to make soap? Fiction, nonfiction, children's books, medical techniques, dental, smelting, farming, hairdressing, chemistry, woodworking, cooking, any how-to book you can find. Excuse me. Take lots of games with you, toys, musical instruments, sheet music would be nice, extra parts, spare parts for everything, and make sure you have a way of making more parts, because these things are going to wear out, and you're going to be all on your own. Now, the key to this, frankly, is you got to live in a cave. There is no option. The nice thing about a cave is it's a ready-made dwelling place. And because of the planetary lightning, you need a cave. Because caves usually are hidden, the rule is if they don't know you're there, they will not come look for you, which I mean people who didn't do any planning at all and are starving and are desperate. And people who are starving and desperate, people don't think at the best of times, but deprive them of food for a day, maybe two, and any shred of humanity they might have had would be gone. So, you found your cave, you bought your land, you got your supplies. Now you're locked in the cave. Now what are your problems? Well, again, I've been doing this for 40 years. I can't broad brush this for you. I can't give you specifications. I have to broad brush this. I can't do anything else. I'm sorry. To be comfortable, fair amount of technology. You're going to need, of course, energy. You're going to need lighting. not just for yourself so you can read, but your animals are going to need lights. Your plants are going to need a certain amount of light. You're going to need air. Look up HEPA filters, H-E-P-A. HEPA filters will filter out most radioactive particles. It will filter out all genetically modified spores from the plants that they're turning against us. Monsanto, the biggest monsters of all time when it comes to destroying our food supplies. I don't know if a HEPA filter will have any defense against the Raytheon gigaflop airborne microscopic computer particles. That I don't know. We'll cover that in another story once I get over the shock of discovering they've actually done that. You have to deal with waste treatment. Where's the sewage going? Where's the garbage going? How are you going to recycle? Now, and I don't really want to alarm you, like what we have talked about isn't alarming enough, but you're not going to be alone in the caves. As we've talked about before, the Earth's surface, the Earth's crust, is absolutely honeycombed with caves. And numerous civilizations have gone underground and stayed there because it was smarter than going back onto the surface. So you're going to have, hopefully not, but you might have company. And there's lots of passive devices you can build that will help you in this. I'm not going to list the website. You'll just have to look it up in the blog on our website, the2012fad.com, and look at this episode number, which is 2011-03-13, and look at the websites there. These are the things that you really need to build and have. Don't really want to get into the dynamics of it. Again, we're broad brushing here. Other things you should have, just common sense stuff. Freeze-dried foodstuffs, tinned food, at least a 5-year supply to hold you until your own crops come in, to hold you in case your crops fail at any particular time, just in case. And you're also going to need to learn how to freeze-dry food. Do you know how to tin food? Do you know how to preserve food? You need to know. And you're going to need lots of guns and plenty of ammo and ways to make more gunpowder and to make bullets. Now, little known facts are that if you have a couple of electrode plates and you put them out in the sun, hidden up there in the rocks somewhere where nobody can see them, but they're getting sunlight. If you connect those by cables down into the cave, into the ground, into your planters, your plants will grow without sunlight. Yeah, it's a trick you're not supposed to know. Now, another important thing to have is plenty of pure silver bars, and pure as possible, 0.999, pure round ounces with you, because silver is a natural antibacterial. So when you have those coins, those bars, drop them into your water supply, leave them there. When you're milking your cows, drop at least 1 silver ounce into every bucket of milk. It will help keep you, disease-free. So now let's look at the hemispheres. Let's start with the northern hemisphere, the pros and cons. See, in the northern hemisphere, there's going to be a lot of war, radioactive fallout. If some fool pushes a button in the Middle East and launches 1 or 2 nuclear missiles, more than likely the other fool will launch theirs as well. That's when the problem starts, and we're not even beginning at that. Smaller countries like Iraq, Iran, have cobalt-60 retaliation methods. Now, cobalt-60, as we talked about earlier, when you buy irradiated food, there's probably a place nearby you that irradiates food and you don't even know it's there, but they use cobalt-60 to irradiate your food. When you irradiate food, it kills all of the bacteria, the funguses, the parasites, whatever's in it that causes food to spoil. The problem is it also turns the food into poison. So you may have, in Europe here, they sell milk in cartons, cardboard cartons, and you keep it at room temperature for months at a time. That's great. It looks like milk, it tastes like milk, but it's actually just basically poison. But, if you need it for your coffee, what are you going to do? All that radioactive fallout from the missiles and from the cobalt-60, because Middle Eastern countries know how to take cobalt-60, grind it into a powder, treat it, and then all they have to do is when they hear that their country's been attacked, they're in London, they're in Rome, they're in Paris, they're in New York, and they hear that their countries have been attacked in the Middle East, they take this powder, this cobalt-60 powder, and they just walk around cities and spread it. Or they go to the New York, the Empire State Building, and they just throw it over the edge. And this is where all your favorite zombie movies become real life. Because cobalt-60 poisoning will melt your brain. And you will degenerate very, very quickly, but not before you become insane. Again, go to rense.com, R-E-N-S-E. Look up Tim Rifat, R-I-F-A-T. The man is a genius. He understands this. So in the Northern Hemisphere, we have the problem of radioactive fallout. Now, you can prevent a lot of the effects of radiation poisoning by having fresh supplies, by growing your own chlorella and spirulina. Now, these are both single-celled plants that are very easy to grow in a pool of water, but you need to know how. You need a book. They're both natural detoxifiers. They're good for what they call chelation. Chelation basically means in your body, they bind with the radioactive material and they get expelled when you go to the toilet. Basically, it gets radioactive particles out of your body. You should be able to find how-to books on how to grow chlorella and spirulina. They do it in India. Small villages grow these two as cash crops. So do that. If you know anything about working with salt water, frankly, seaweed is better at doing this, but in the mountains you're going to require energy, pumps, a balanced ecosystem. And again, I put a reference on our blog for this episode you can look up. Again, this is a broad brush. I'm sorry, I can't give you endless, minute detail. I just can't do it. You pay me a couple $1,000,000, I'll build it for you, because I got all the notes. Now, one fellow asked me about surviving in New Mexico, and I have to be honest, I can't see it. It's got flat land, water will move easily over that. It's relatively close to a major ocean, and it's surrounded by faults. Now, that said, there is, on the other hand, the fact that many civilizations have survived past events in the caves of the Grand Canyon. My own people, the Hopi, came out of the Grand Canyon 10,000 years ago. If you're going to be in that part of the world, check out the Grand Canyon. No promises, because the water's going to get there. Now today there are other civilizations that are still in the desert floors, under the floors of Southern California, completely underground, out in the desert. But you know, you're talking about a huge amount of technology, that if it's just you, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, and a few others, you're not going to be able to afford that. Or even if you could, you wouldn't know what to do it or how to do it. So that's tough. Okay, other options in the Northern Hemisphere. Central Europe. Find a country that's surrounded by mountains. Find caves. Try to be in the middle of the continent. Try to be away from major bodies of water. Try to be in a culture that is basically farm-based, that has no foreign debt. We found one here in Europe. We're there. We're building the village there. But I can't invite you unless you have money, because unfortunately it comes down to money. I can't help you unless we have the cash. I'm sorry. But this is truth time. Other locations in the Southern Hemisphere, South America. Now, the good thing about being close to the South Pole is all the Earth's new water, new air, new oil, basically, comes out of the South Pole. So all that air flows north, and so keep all the radiation in the Northern Hemisphere. Problem is, again, you're next to the South Pole. And when all that ice, when the planet flips and all that ice moves into the ocean, there's going to be a wave. Well, that wave is going to be so tall and so big and moving so fast, it's actually going to circumnavigate the Earth several times. Now, there are lots of Europeans in South America. And so you could probably find folks who think, as we do. There's a whole community in Ecuador of foreigners built up there. I believe it's Mr. George Green. Look up George Green in Ecuador. He's a very wealthy man who's been trying very hard to explain all this to people for years. And he's worth millions, and he hasn't gotten very far, and I don't have any money, so I don't expect to get anywhere at all, but we're giving it a try. The Argentinian government, for example, is very corrupt, so not really maybe a good place to be. And the city of Buenos Aires, I'm told, is very dangerous, whereas the city of Mendoza is very friendly and very safe. This is according to my Argentinian friends. And it's also agricultural based. But again, lots of open land and not nearly high enough up. Now, Brazil, I think, has the sixth largest economy in the world. Again, really close to the South Pole. Again, not a lot in the way of major mountains. But you've also got Chile. Chile is right there, very southern, but it's got the Andes. So you've got lots of mountains, very high, lots of caves. But it also is the center of the last couple of major earthquakes. The one in 2010 actually changed the physical shape of the Earth. So, again, it's up to you. What can you afford? What do you want to do? What do you feel most comfortable being or going? Got an email from a gentleman who's in Switzerland, which is great. Very high mountains, very secluded, very, very safe. The problem is the government. The Swiss are very pro-Swiss and anti-foreigner. So unless you've married a Swiss person, when things get bad, they're going to throw you out of the country. Unless you bought off a lot of people, which again gets back to having a lot of cash. So I cannot recommend Switzerland for foreigner. One gentleman asked me, well, how about having a boat? How about going to the Bahamas? Well, same problem. Water levels are rising. The Bahamas will be buried underwater. And it's going to be buried underwater either from a violent change of the Earth, being flipped end for end. Just look at the waterline at Baalbek, up 3,840 feet up in the hills of Lebanon, where the flood sat for a couple of years the last time. So the Bahamas will be buried underwater either because the Earth flips end for end or because the South Pole is hit by a meteor and melts all that ice. Again, ice into the ocean. And again, sorry, broad brushing. Don't have a lot of time. See, at the village, we'll be using things that I know about, such as vacuum-powered electrical generators, vacuum tube technology, which are immune to the electromagnetic pulse, which is going to happen when the Earth flips. And all that planetary lightning happens, all of your electronics will be fried. Now, the Russians know this, and the Russians have gone back to using vacuum tubes in all of their technology, and they're real good at it. We're going to be using hemp-fueled diesel engines. Hemp is a wonderful product. Hemp has been around forever. And hemp is the most useful plant you can imagine. From hemp, which you get a crop every 90 days, and it actually restores the soil, as opposed to cotton, which actually decimates the soil. Hemp, you can get fiber, makes wonderful cloth. Hemp, you can get oil, which you can either drink as food or use and burn as diesel fuel. It gives you seeds that are edible. It gives you sugar, which you can make plastic out of. It's really an extraordinary plant, and it was outlawed in the United States because a very rich man by the name of William Randolph Hearst, back in the early 1930s, wanted, obviously, to make money. So he bought large tracts of old-growth forest, which he wanted to make money on. But at the time, we were growing hemp in the United States, and we were using it for all these things. We made paper from hemp. We made cloth from hemp. We made rope from hemp. We made fuel from hemp. It was feed for us and our animals. So William Randolph Hearst bought a U.S. senator and outlawed hemp in the United States. So all of a sudden, you couldn't grow the most useful plant known to man. You had to buy, if you wanted paper, you had to buy these old-growth forests from William Randolph Hearst, and he made, of course, millions. Hemp is a wonderful plant. Get it. I'm not talking about marijuana. I'm talking about hemp. Anyway, we'll be growing lots of hemp. We'll also be using motionless pumps and custom-designed computers. I designed these on my own that will survive the EMP. So we've got all of this. But again, sadly, this is me planning for 40 years. And I simply cannot speak to your individual needs. I'm planning for a community of at least 100 people, all hired for their unique skills. And pardon my spiritual leanings, a community of good people. And we're going to hire these workers, these artisans, these farmers, these craftsmen. And they don't have any knowledge of the event. They don't need to. We're going to hire them to save their lives and to give them a chance, all of us a chance in the future, and in a real life. and all of us will live it together. And honestly, I do hope to meet you on the flip side. I hope to shake your hand, and I hope to hear all about all of your adventures, and hey, I'll buy the beer. See, you're beginning to see, I hope now, that this is not something you can just throw together at the last minute. I've been doing this for 40 years. So I know what needs to be done. I know what can be done. So if you're smart, see if you can raise some investment capital for a for-profit business. The village will be run as a for-profit business up until the very end. And then we close our doors and hide. So if you get any ideas for raising capital for an above organic farm, a ski resort, a training facility, work on it. And let me know. I'll give you anything you need. But first I need to know who you are, because I've been approached several times by people claiming that they can raise capital. And I say, great, here's my resume, let me see yours. Never heard from them again. I wish I could be more help. For all of us here at the 2012fad.com, this has been Charlie Bluehawk. Wishing you a really good day. And please remember, please try to keep at least that one good thought. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel finding his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race. Their black magic captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.